woman named Insuni, he also said, "She's my favorite artist. If you'd had a daughter, I bet she would have looked like her." Tears! That's my Korean father's way of saying, "I'm sorry." He died 1 year later in 2017 after battling cancer.
This journey was anything but a straight line for us. We both had a sense of call. We both wanted kids. But what that looked like, when to have kids, who would work, who would stay home, how to balance it all, and how to build a life together was a work in progress. Without a plan, our home life fell into the common tropes. Gail at home with the kids, me at school. I got into Duke for a master's program. It seemed easier to me to keep picking up side jobs to make ends meet. But this also meant more hours of Gail at home with little ones. Sometimes it meant tense conversations because Gail's dream was drifting further away, while I was on a path toward mine. And sometimes it was hard for me to hear, if I heard at all, because I felt like I was working all the time. I was reading just enough, or maybe just a few pages, and I felt like I wasn't measuring up. The journey involved watching as Gail got passed over at our church because she's a woman. It was years and years of taking turns while other people seemed to be on a fast track or enjoying their 20s, while we plodded along, just trying to get through. It included watching as my mother endured and ultimately died from lung cancer. As we raised our kids, questions of race and ethnicity and belonging continued to press. How do we instill in them a sense of being Korean, of being Black, of navigating racial ambiguity and not quite fitting in? And in the midst of it all, it was discovering ways to love and be present for each other, trying to create a new culture in our life together. Along the way, we've come to realize that everything goes in the pot, so to speak. Being committed to each other's flourishing in a world of racism and sexism means we need each other to become our whole selves. Now we've begun to reflect on our journey more intentionally, as well as the journey we've shared with other couples trying to find their way in a world of difference. This book has been tugging at us for a few years. Having been married for 25 years, working as a pastor, Gail, and a professor, Brian, we've walked with many couples who are asking questions about marriage, balancing careers, and navigating race in a world where the violence of white supremacy only increases.
When we got married at 21 in a little church in Maryland, there was nothing elaborate. A church that neither of us were members of, a small reception at Brian's mom's house with his family, a few of Brian's church folk, some random neighbors, and a handful of Gail's friends. We had no idea what we were in for or where we were going. We had talked about going into ministry together, about maybe planting a church, but we were certain that whatever we did, we would be in it together. Those senses of call took us on some winding paths. For me, it started as a part-time music director, then volunteer choir director, then worship leader, then seminarian, to associate pastor, to executive pastor, to lead pastor. The path for Brian was just as circuitous. High school history teacher, educational specialist, seminarian, full-time TA, and any other part-time job I could muster. Doctoral student, then professor. It's easy to imagine that where we are now was the plan all along, but in actuality, it's all been about listening and making mistakes, then trying to listen some more. There was never a plan, only an intention to do whatever we could together, to make room for the other, and to avoid some of the pain we experienced in our own homes growing up. While we did not end up planting a church together or working together in ministry, our work and vocations dovetail. We still work out of a deep sense of call to the church and to serve as witnesses to God's presence and work in the world. But we have also found our own unique ways of living into those calls, and it was only together that we actually found how those calls rang most truly in each of us. In the midst of creating a home and family together,